Hi everyone, it's Mark and Alex coming to you from the paddock at Monza. 34 degrees, it's a bit different to the weather when we talked to you in Zandvoort last week. Alex, Thursday's media day, what's been the main talking points?
I think basically the track itself.
Yes, that's true.
And the big changes. I think everybody will be aware of the whole surface has been changed for this year. Particularly, there seems to be quite a lot of angst amongst the drivers about other changes that have been made at the same time, particularly involving the curbs. So we know that things have changed at the first two chicanes, that first of all, the turn one, everything's a little bit wider for turn two. But at the same time, the drivers reckon you can pretty much, there's less of a challenge now with the sort of historic curbs that were here at Monza. But what's drawn their particular eye, actually there's two things. One is that Ascari, the curbs are now so low, they reckon that the cars are almost going to be shortcutting the corners because they'll be able to get so far across and still remain within track limits. And that will make lap times faster. That's the thing Lewis Hamilton was talking about, particularly in the press conference. But they seem to be particularly annoyed that they weren't consulted about the changes, and we know that the GPDA getting a statement out and things like that. And I think that that's just generally a bit of angst in the air. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it took teams by surprise, not just us. It took a few teams by surprise. All you have to do is look at the Fernando Alonso wasn't going to be in FP1 tomorrow, but now all of a sudden the team have taken they've got to put him in because they realised how different this track's going to be. Daniel Ricciardo this morning was first ready to speak about it, and he said, look, this is an old school track in a nice way. We love that it's old school. We're bringing all these new races to the calendar, but the ones we should almost cherish them, if you like. My words, not his, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, he was not happy. He was the first one to mention that the drivers hadn't been consulted. They were consulted about the changes made in Montreal earlier in the season. They were happy about the changes. Here they've come here, and I think it feels, they've basically said, look, we've been ignored. You've not come to us. We've been overlooked. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maybe it's that kind of thing, but we won't really know until tomorrow. I think Lewis made that point, didn't he? That until we get out on that circuit, we don't know what these changes are going to be. But clearly, a lot of the drivers are not happy. Like you said, the main issue they've got is not that the changes have been made. Technically, I think it's that they were done without any sort of consultation with the drivers, which I think is fair enough. They're the guys. 20 of them going out there tomorrow. We haven't got to do that. We've got to sit in the air-conditioned room and write about it. But yeah, it was definitely the story of the day, I think. And as ever with F1, it was always something you didn't quite expect to be the story of the day, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing that took on an interesting additional dimension, was the fact that the safety car crashed during its systems test. They do this every Thursday, where we're sat up in the media centre or around in the paddock. The pit lanes close. It's just a full Grand Prix systems check, effectively. The safety car and the medical car, they do the stance on the grid. They go around. You can see on the timing screens what lap times they're doing. And they're filming it. There's obviously the test of the broadcast systems as well. And suddenly, there's a sort of random roar of surprise goes up in the media centre, and you look up and there's the safety car buried sideways in the barriers at the Parabolica. It's just sort of some questions about whether even the new lines that it was taking at Ascari and things that it's been areas of the track it's been running over before might have contributed to that issue. We have no confirmation of that, but it's just a sort of a theory that's floating around. But certainly that sort of crystallised that this is a very different start to a Monza weekend, I think. But it's interesting what you were saying about Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc in particular. I thought they struck a very diplomatic tone in the press conference, funnily enough.
I wonder why,
Exactly, the Italian Grand Prix, the home of Ferrari, Leclerc's team's home race, soon to be Hamilton's home race when he joins Ferrari. But I think your point about Canada is interesting because Leclerc sort of adds in the last little detail there. Yes, everything did get changed in Canada, but they added the curves back into how they used to be, whereas here it's just massively different. I'm not really sure where we go from here, because to a certain extent, shouldn't the drivers just put up and shut up? Do they have to be consulted?
It's also that thing of, as a few of them have said, we don't actually know until tomorrow. We don't know how those cars are going to perform on that track. If we had a day tomorrow and they all hated it and they came out afterwards and said, that's not good, we should have been consulted, I think that that would hold more weight than turning up here, a few of them having to walk around, some of them only seeing it on videos and things like that. And like you say, put up and shut up. It's your job. You're an elite driver. You're going to be going quicker. Does it add to the spectacle potentially? Does it take a little bit away from the history of Monza even with the bumps and everything? Probably, but it also has to keep up with these new tracks, isn't it? You can't keep coming here with these cars with the floors. We've had issues with the floors for how many weeks now? Like, can you have those bumpy rides? It's not going to last if you have that kind of thing. So you mentioned Lewis there. It's always worth speaking to Lewis on a Thursday, if not every other day. He spoke about Antonelli driving in FP1 tomorrow, a change that hasn't been altered back to let Lewis back in the car, of course.
I think that's interesting. That shows you how invested and how involved they are.
Yeah.
They're not going to. They haven't gone, hang on a minute, we need to have both our race drivers in there. This is key to get him out in the first place. But also, it's George Russell's car that he's taking over. So there's dynamics across the board with that one.
Yeah, it's a little strange one, isn't it? But Lewis was good. He said, look, this kid's good, but remember, he's only 18, which I think a lot of people have forgot because he's been spoken about for so long. That is one of the things I think we're all going to forget, especially if he then lands that seat. But, you know, we saw Verstappen all those years ago proving if you're old enough, you're good enough, I think. It's not unheard of. We've seen it before. He's been kind of protected, I think. He's not doing any media here other than F1 TV, I believe, tomorrow. So they're not suddenly going, here's Kimi Antonelli, he's going to come and speak to you all, which is probably wise given that you haven't actually confirmed whether he'll be in the seat or not for next year. But yeah, Lewis was interesting on a few things today. He spoke a lot about the Tifosi as well, didn't he?
He certainly did. He was referencing how in the past they've been shouting at him in Italian, "Come to Ferrari." I won't do the.
No, Lewis tried.
he did. Well, no, I thought I appreciated the fact that he was honest and said, "My Italian's still not improved from when I."
I know he's a busy man, but Duolingo is what I'd suggest in the next few weeks.
No, I'd be utterly hopeless at that. But no, it was. I thought he struck a very good note about what he's clearly presenting to his. Probably existing fans in Italy, but also the ones that are gonna, come towards him when he joins Ferrari next year. But yeah, he just seemed incredibly relaxed, and you don't necessarily always get that with Lewis when it comes to particularly those open press conferences. Hey, maybe they've changed the format of it this weekend. Maybe he's enjoying that a little bit more. Not having to repeat himself so much. But just on the Antonelli thing, I actually what you said there really struck me about the other big story of the day, which is we're at just outside the Williams team. Franco Colapinto making his debut, and I went down to his session. Again, we're talking about this new format for how certain drivers do their interviews when it comes to the TV broadcasters and the written press. His was for the written press just next to the broadcasters, and it was a complete scrum. But basically, what struck me there with the comparisons with Antonelli is that actually I think sometimes we in the media, I include myself in this, we're guilty of forgetting that these are people, and that some of them are very young and just trying to do their best in complex situations. Now, of course, it's not like these are nurses in a hospital who are not getting paid the wages that they should, without wishing to go down a completely separate issue. These are highly paid sports people, and some of them come from extremely wealthy backgrounds. But still, I think that understanding of that human element is important, because it struck me that I thought Franco Colapinto spoke incredibly well. He answered every question. He went from being very open at one point, a little bit cagey, crossed the arms, then came out again. I noticed hands were a little bit shaky, so he's keeping them in the pocket. And again, it struck me as like, wow, this kid is suddenly doing something that he wasn't expecting to do, doing something very difficult, and actually I thought doing it very well. And I wasn't aware, for example, that a lot of his fans on social media have been comparing him to Lionel Messi.
Yeah, quite an achievement. No pressure.
He's like quite the ramping up of expectations. But yeah,
it's a strange one, that, isn't it? I mean, as you said, I think he spoke really well. Again, you loathe to draw the comparisons with Antonelli, because Antonelli's not confirmed, of course. And when he is, I'm sure he'll do the same. But like you said, the number of people in there shows the interest. It is a story in the sense that a week ago, Sargent was in the car, and we all know what happened. Another crash, another write-off, if you like. The news comes out this week. So yeah, it's a fresh story. It's good to see that he speaks to the media. Like you said, a bit nervous. Whether he'll be nervous out on the track tomorrow will be another matter. Hopefully not, for his sake. But tomorrow, if we look ahead, what are we looking forward to? I guess moaning drivers will be the main talking point of the day, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to, because I always love this, one of the great privilege of our jobs is going trackside and seeing the cars. And again, just getting used to the fact that Monza is a little bit different now, and we will have a more definitive answer of whether it's, I don't know, in my head I'm trying to say ruined, but whether that challenge is
loss of character is what a lot of the drivers are saying, wasn't it?
Much more diplomatic there from the drivers, funnily enough, with their media training from a PR perspective. But yeah, so that's what I'm very much looking forward to. I think there'll be a lot of chat about Antonelli, the fact that we're seeing him in the car for the first time. I mean, look, if it goes wrong, if there's a crash, we have seen it here. Again, talking about Colapinto, Alex Albon saying this is almost the perfect track to make your debut because it's just not that complex, it's not that technical. Antonelli in the car for the first time in a different kind of more intense spotlight. If something goes wrong, then all of a sudden the narrative around him changes. Now, we obviously don't wish that upon him at all, but that would be something to keep an eye on, how he performs effectively is what I'm getting at. But yeah, I don't know about you, Mark. Any other delights you've got your eye on?
It's a difficult,
how many pieces have you had so far?
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. I'm keeping down the numbers. FP1, FP2 is always interesting, sometimes boring. Weather's great, so there's not going to be those excuses. There's nothing to hide behind for these new boys tomorrow, is there? They're in, some of the best machinery in the world. They're on this circuit, as you said, Albon saying it's one of the best to make your debut. It's not like last week in Zandvoort where we had rain and wind and those kind of things. So it is a good time to come in and put your name down, put a marker down, or not, as the case may be. Alex, as he said, he's going to be trackside, so I guarantee tomorrow he will be our roving reporter, will give you the update on the curbs and everything else, better than any of the drivers, more honest than any of the drivers, whether it's ruined the circuit, whether it's changed the characteristics. But join us for that. We'll be back tomorrow to review free practice 1 and 2.